All right, welcome to Growth Models and Goal Seeking. I'm really excited to have you with us. This course puts together a lot of experience, a lot of different years working with different kinds of technology companies, ranging from SaaS companies to mobile companies. And one of the biggest questions that I've received over time is just this idea of how do I get to my goals? Well, this sounds really cliche, but the truth is that most startups out there are banging head against the wall, trying to figure out how to get to the goals that they've set. And as a matter of fact, most of those circumstances are very interesting because growth is impossible, because there are certain things that are at play that are really going to prevent this startup or this product from taking off. And this course, what it's going to teach you is a really clear framework for how to think through the process of modeling the growth of your company and then coming up with a strategy and an execution plan that is going to over deliver on your targets. So very quickly, here's what you're going to build. This is the completed model that we are going to do together. The premise behind this one is that there's a transactional software product on a B2B product, but we've set it up in such a way that if you're working on an e-commerce, this is going to help you think through that e-commerce very much in the same way. And the way that we approach this is in a 4-step process after we understand sort of the theory behind why we're doing certain things and the way that we're doing them. But we're going to approach this from the perspective that, we're trying to build an understanding of who our market is and build a revenue model that sort of creates value out of that insight and captures value. And once we understand how much money we're able to capture from them, we'll actually be able to think through how much money we can spend to acquire customers. From the perspective that we know what our goals are and we know how much our cost per acquisition, for example, should be. And that'll lead us to a place where we can actually start thinking about what kind of channels we want to use to acquire customers. In this case, this is a Shopify app that we're playing around with. And this in the end would be our clear plan for how we expect to both launch the company and what kind of channels we're going to be using to drive installs, but then how over time we build different kinds of marketing systems that continue to build demand for the product so that the product really can build demand for itself rather than us constantly having to go out and do that. This really helps us also understand the process of introducing and sunsetting channels over time, because we understand that the life cycle of a startup and the life cycle of a channel in a startup are tightly intertwined, in that a channel that works today might not work 3 months from now, but then also a channel that you use when you're launching might not be something that you or your team might be willing to rely on 12 months after launching. And this captures those nuances. What's interesting is that by the time that you understand how people are coming through the door, your model is also going to break down the very important parts of what happens after somebody comes through the door. How do I ensure that they get to value as soon as possible? And this is actually a very good example of how we're going to do that. We'll have a better understanding of, based on the cost per install that is growing over time, what are the other metrics that I need to work over the first, call it 5 months in this case, or first 6 months of launching, things like the churn rate or the conversion rate from my free install to paid accounts, for example. But most importantly, because this is a B2B product that a merchant might use to install on their store, for example, this is just an example, that means that there's going to be 2 sides of the coin. That's one of the reasons we chose a transactional model for this, is because we can show how the 2 kinds of users in this case are interacting with each other. If you're running an e-commerce or a mobile app, that might not be required. You'll only have one side of the coin. But if you're doing something for a business, or you're enabling a business to do something, like for example with a widget, odds are that widget is going to be seen by a bunch of end consumers. And it's important for you, or for me in this case, for my model, to have an understanding of the relationship between how merchants should be behaving, but then also the relationship of how consumers should be behaving, and how many impressions I need to be driving of my end product. These are interesting KPIs because it enables us at a really high macro level to understand if we're going in the right direction. That is going to enable you to build basically a growth marketing roadmap that, armed with the demand generation roadmap that you have from understanding what kind of channels you're going after, you can start better leading your teams or being more deliberate about your growth curve. And you'll have an idea of what needs to be done on a month-to-month basis with really clear goals and really clear limits that you need to respect. All right, let's get going.